Kella's hands trembled as she stared at her phone screen, her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and throat. The message showed as delivered with a small checkmark that might as well have been a death sentence. The photo, that photo, the one where lace was more suggestion than coverage, where the dim lighting of her bedroom had made her feel brave and desirable, had just landed in the wrong inbox. Not just any wrong inbox. Dominic Costigan's inbox. No, 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 no. The words tumbled from her lips like a desperate prayer as her thumb frantically searched for an unsend button that didn't exist. Her apartment suddenly felt too small, too hot, the walls closing in as panic clawed up her spine. She'd meant to send it to Jake, her boyfriend of 2 years who was working overseas, who'd been asking for something to keep him company during the long lonely nights in Dubai. Instead, she'd clicked the wrong contact. Violet's phone remained silent in her palm. No immediate response. Maybe he hadn't seen it yet. It was 11:47 p.m. Perhaps he was asleep, or busy with whatever dangerous things men like Dominic Costigan did when the city lights dimmed and normal people locked their doors. She had exactly one job. Be his executive assistant, manage his legitimate business fronts, ask no questions, and remain invisible. She'd been working for him for only 3 weeks, desperately needing the salary that was triple what anywhere else would pay, enough to cover her mother's medical bills and her own suffocating student loans. And now she'd sent him a photo that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. Her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a notification that made her blood run cold. Dominic Costigan is typing. What could he possibly say? What does a man like that, a man who controlled half the city's underground, who made politicians nervous and rivals disappear, do when his mousy assistant accidentally sends him a photo meant for seduction? Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here with me today for this absolutely wild story. Drop a comment down below and let me know where you're watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button because trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. This story is going to take you on a ride. Let's get into it. The 3 dots continued their taunting dance across her screen before finally, mercifully, disappearing. No message came through. Violet sat frozen on her worn second-hand couch, the same one she'd dragged up 4 flights of stairs when she'd moved into this showbox apartment 8 months ago. Back when her mother's diagnosis was still fresh, back when she'd still believed that hard work and hope were enough to outrun catastrophe. Her phone remained silent. She forced herself to breathe, to think. Who was Dominic Costigan, really? In 3 weeks of working for him, she'd learned to read the man in fragments, the way his jaw tightened when someone wasted his time, how his voice could drop to a lethal softness that made grown men stumble over apologies, the surprising gentleness with which he'd once helped an elderly woman with her groceries in the building lobby when he thought no one was watching. He was a contradiction she'd been carefully avoiding examining too closely. Violet had grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes until she'd aged out of the system at 18 with nothing but a fierce determination to build something stable, something hers. She'd worked 2 jobs through college, graduated with honors and crushing debt, and landed a respectable position at a marketing firm that paid just enough to survive. Then her mother, the woman who'd given her up at birth but reached out 6 years ago seeking forgiveness and connection, got sick. Stage 4 breast cancer. Experimental treatments that insurance companies laughed at covering. Bills that multiplied like malignant cells. The marketing firm's salary became a joke. A cruel one. That's when her best friend Riley McAllister, who bartended at an upscale club frequented by people who lived in the shadows, mentioned an opening. He's looking for an assistant, Riley had said, sliding a business card across the table during their weekly coffee date. Pays incredibly well. And before you ask, yes, he's that Dominic Costigan. But Violet, he's fair. Dangerous. Definitely. But fair. Fair. What a word to describe a man whose reputation preceded him like thunder before lightning. But desperate times had made Violet brave, or perhaps just reckless. She'd interviewed in his penthouse office overlooking the city, all floor-to-ceiling windows and dangerous elegance. Dominic had been younger than she'd expected, maybe 35, with dark hair that held a hint of silver at the temples and eyes the color of smoke before fire. He'd asked about her skills, her discretion, her ability to compartmentalize. He hadn't asked about her morals. Perhaps he'd known better. "I need someone intelligent," he'd said, his voice like aged whiskey, smooth with an underlying burn. "Someone invisible. Can you be invisible, Miss Keller?" She'd nodded, needing the money more than she needed her conscience clean. "My mother is dying," she'd found herself saying, honesty spilling out unbidden. "I need this job not because I want it, but because without it, I lose her. So yes, Mr. Costigan, I can be whatever you need me to be." Something had flickered in his eyes then, recognition, perhaps, or respect. He'd hired her on the spot. Now, 3 weeks later, she'd shattered her invisibility in the most spectacular way possible. Her phone buzzed again. Not a message, a call. The screen displayed his name like an accusation. Dominic Costigan. Incoming call. Her thumb hovered over the decline button, but declining a call from Dominic Costigan at midnight seemed like a faster route to disaster than answering it. She swiped to accept, her voice barely a whisper. "Hello. Miss Keller." His voice was unreadable, controlled. "I assume you're aware of your mistake." Yes. Mr. Costigan, I'm so incredibly sorry. It was meant for your boyfriend, Jake Morrison, the architect working in Dubai." He said it casually, as if he hadn't just revealed that he knew details about her personal life she'd never shared. Of course he knows, she thought. Men like Dominic didn't hire anyone without knowing everything down to their blood type. "Yes," she admitted, shame heating her cheeks. "I clicked the wrong contact. I'll resign, effective immediately. I understand this is completely inappropriate. Violet." Her first name in his mouth stopped her rambling. He'd never used it before, always maintaining the formal distance of Miss Keller. "Don't resign. And delete that photo from your boyfriend's queue." Confusion swirled through her panic. "What? Why?" His next words were measured, careful. "Because Jake Morrison isn't in Dubai right now. He's in an apartment 15 minutes from you with a woman named Cassandra. He's been there every night this week." The world tilted sideways. That's not. But even as denial formed, pieces clicked together. Jake's increasingly sparse phone calls. The way he'd been asking for photos but never sending any in return. His vague answers about his project timeline. "I had you investigated before I hired you, Violet. That investigation stays current for anyone in my employment. I learned about Morrison's extracurricular activities 3 days ago. I was determining the appropriate way to inform you. By waiting until I humiliated myself." Bitterness crept into her voice. "By waiting until you were ready to hear it." A pause. "The photo has been deleted from my phone. This conversation will be the only acknowledgement it ever existed. Get some sleep, Miss Keller. Tomorrow, we'll discuss your boyfriend's betrayal if you wish. And something else that's come up, something that requires your particular skills." He disconnected before she could respond. Violet sat in the darkness of her apartment, her phone cooling in her palm, unsure which revelation had shaken her more, that her boyfriend was a cheating bastard, or that the most dangerous man she'd ever met had just shown her an unexpected shade of mercy. She had no idea that his mercy was about to become the most dangerous thing in her life. Violet didn't sleep. How could she? She'd spent the dark hours alternating between stalking Jake's social media, which revealed nothing because of course he was careful, and replaying Dominic's words in her mind. By the time dawn bled through her thin curtains, she'd cried, raged, and finally settled into a numb determination. Jake had called twice. She'd sent both to voicemail. At 7:30 a.m., she forced herself to shower, to dress in her usual professional armor, a navy blouse and pencil skirt that made her feel competent even when she felt shattered. If Dominic wanted to discuss something else, she'd face it with whatever dignity she had left. Her phone chimed as she was applying mascara with unsteady hands. "Dominic Costigan. Car will be there in 10 minutes. We're not going to the office." Her stomach dropped. In 3 weeks, every meeting had been at his downtown headquarters, a gleaming high-rise that housed his legitimate import-export business. Deviation from routine felt ominous. "Violet, where are we going?" "Dominic Costigan. To handle what I mentioned. Wear comfortable shoes. And Violet, bring your passport. Passport. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. She should refuse, should demand answers, should remember that her boss was a man who operated outside the law and moral boundaries. But she also remembered the gentleness in his voice last night, the mercy he'd shown when he could have wielded her mistake like a weapon. 10 minutes later, a black Mercedes idled at her curb. The driver, a mountain of a man named Thomas who served as Dominic's head of security, opened the rear door without a word. Dominic sat inside, dressed more casually than she'd ever seen him. Dark jeans, a fitted black Henley that revealed the edge of a tattoo on his forearm. He looked younger, more dangerous, entirely too attractive for her vulnerable state. "Good morning, Miss Keller." His eyes scanned her face, noting the evidence of her sleepless night with an expression she couldn't read. "Coffee's in the holder. You'll need it." She slid in, maintaining careful distance on the leather seat. "Where are we going?" "The airport." Her pulse spiked. "Mr. Costigan." "Dominic," he corrected quietly. "Given that you've seen me at my most informal, and I've seen you similarly, I think we can dispense with formalities in private. Don't you?" Heat flooded her cheeks at the indirect reference to the photo. "You said you deleted it." "I did. Doesn't mean I didn't see it first." His eyes held hers, something flickering in their depths that made her breath catch. Not lust, or not only that. Something more complicated. "You're stunning, Violet. Your boyfriend is a fool." The compliment landed like a physical touch. She looked away, reaching for the coffee to give her hand something to do. "You still haven't told me where we're going." "Chicago. There's a situation that requires immediate attention, and I need someone with me who can." He paused, choosing words carefully, "provide cover." "Legitimacy. My usual associates are too recognizable, too obviously what they are. You, however, are perfect." "Perfect for what?" His jaw tightened. "My sister is in trouble." Of all the things Violet had expected, family had not been on the list. In 3 weeks, Dominic had revealed nothing personal, maintained an impenetrable wall between his professional and private lives. "I didn't know you had a sister." "Most people don't. Mirabel is 5 years younger than me. I've kept her separate from my business interests. Sent her to the best schools, set her up in Chicago with a legitimate career as an art dealer. Everything I've done, a significant portion of it has been to ensure she never has to live the life I've lived." There was pain in his voice, carefully controlled but unmistakable. "What kind of trouble?" Violet asked softly. Dominic pulled out his phone, brought up a photo, and handed it to her. A beautiful young woman with long dark hair and Dominic's distinctive eyes smiled at the camera, her arm around a handsome blonde man whose smile didn't quite reach his eyes. 3 months ago, Mirabel married Adrian Volkov. I ran background checks, came up clean, successful tech entrepreneur, no criminal record, seemingly legitimate. I gave them my blessing." His knuckles whitened against his thigh. 2 days ago, I received intelligence that Adrian Volkov is actually Adrian Sokolov, nephew to Mikhail Sokolov, head of the Russian Bratva's Chicago operation. Mirabel's marriage isn't a love story. It's a strategy." Violet's blood ran cold. Even she knew the Bratva's reputation: ruthless, territorial, and currently engaged in a bitter power struggle with Italian syndicates across multiple cities. "They married her to get to you." "To infiltrate my operations. Yes. To gain leverage." Dominic's voice dropped to something lethal. "Mirabel called me yesterday, scared. Adrian's become controlling, possessive. She found documents in his office, plans, blueprints of my properties, financial records. She realizes now what he is, what she's become trapped in. She wants out. And you need me because..." Dominic turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his eyes pinned her in place. "Because I can't storm in with armed men and extract her without starting a war that will get her killed. I need to do this quietly, carefully. Adrian knows my enforcers, my usual people. But he doesn't know you." Understanding dawned. "You want me to pose as What? My girlfriend. My very serious, very respectable girlfriend whom I'm introducing to my sister for the first time. It's believable, I've been unusually private lately, and you're exactly the kind of woman who would suggest I'm reforming, going legitimate. His hand moved as if to touch her knee, then stopped, hovering. Adrian will let his guard down around you. See you as proof that I'm softening, distracted. While he's underestimating the threat, we'll get Mirabel somewhere safe. This is insane. Yes. I'm not trained for this. I'm a secretary who accidentally sent you a nude photo. I'm not some spy or... You're brave. His hand completed its journey, settling warm and steady on her knee. The touch sent electricity up her spine. You're smart, you think on your feet, and you're one of the only people in my life who isn't afraid to call my ideas insane to my face. That's exactly who I need beside me. Violet should pull away, should remind him of every professional boundary they were obliterating. Should remember that this man was dangerous, that this situation could get her killed, that she'd already lost her boyfriend and her dignity in the past 12 hours. Instead, she found herself asking, what happens if this goes wrong? Dominic's thumb traced a small circle against her knee, probably unconsciously. I won't let anything happen to you. You have my word. The word of a Mafia boss. His smile was sharp, self-aware. The word of a man who knows what it's like to be desperate to protect the people he cares about. You're doing it for your mother. I'm doing it for my sister. We're not so different, you and I. The car pulled onto the highway toward the airport, and Violet realized she'd already made her decision. Maybe it was exhaustion, or heartbreak, or the intoxicating feeling of being seen, truly seen, by someone who understood desperation intimately. Or maybe it was the way Dominic looked at her, like she was capable of extraordinary things. Okay, she whispered. I'll be your girlfriend. I'll help you save your sister. His hand squeezed her knee gently, gratefully. Thank you, Violet. She took a shaky sip of coffee, trying to calm her racing heart. So what's our story? How did we meet? How long have we been together? What do I need to know to make this convincing? Dominic settled back into his seat, but his hand remained on her knee, an anchor, or perhaps a promise. We'll have the flight to Chicago to build our cover story. It's 3 hours. Enough time to become convincing lovers. The word lovers hung in the air between them, loaded with implication and danger. As the Mercedes navigated morning traffic, Violet caught sight of her reflection in the window. She barely recognized herself, the woman who'd spent years playing it safe, following rules, making herself invisible. That woman wouldn't survive what was coming. She'd have to become someone else entirely. Someone brave enough to walk into the lion's den on the arm of a man whose touch was already making her forget every reason this was a terrible idea. What Violet didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the photo she'd accidentally sent had done more than embarrass her. It had shown Dominic Costigan something he'd been trying to ignore for 3 weeks, that his invisible assistant had become impossible not to see. And in his world, visibility was the most dangerous thing of all. The private jet was smaller than Violet had imagined, all cream leather and polished wood that screamed wealth acquired through means she shouldn't examine too closely. Dominic had guided her aboard with a hand at the small of her back, a touch that felt simultaneously protective and possessive. Now, 30,000 feet above the ground, they sat across from each other with tablets, notepads, and the architecture of a convincing lie spread between them. We need to establish timeline first, Dominic said, his jacket discarded. Sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with ink she wanted to examine more closely. How long have we been together? Violet forced herself to focus. Long enough to be serious, but recent enough that Mirabel wouldn't be offended you haven't mentioned me before. 3 months. 4. His eyes met hers. We started seeing each other a month before I hired you officially. That's why I gave you the job, wanted to keep you close. That's actually smart. She made a note. It explains why you trust me with sensitive information. Where did we meet? A smile ghosted across his lips. Riley's bar. You were there celebrating a friend's birthday. I noticed you immediately. You were laughing at something, completely unself-conscious. I sent over a drink. You sent it back. Violet's breath caught. Did that really happen? The first part, yes. For months ago, I was at Riley's place handling business. You were there, wearing a green dress, laughing with your friends. I did notice you. His voice dropped. I noticed you so thoroughly that I had my people find out who you were. When Riley mentioned you were looking for better employment, I may have arranged the opportunity. The revelation sent her thoughts spinning. You orchestrated my interview. I created an opening, yes. Your qualifications got you hired. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I needed someone I could trust, Violet. Someone whose desperation matched my own need for loyalty. Your situation with your mother, that wasn't exploitation. It was recognition. You'd do anything for the people you love. So would I. That makes us allies. Or it makes me compromised. In my world, everyone's compromised. At least with you, I understand the leverage. His eyes softened. How is your mother, by the way? The question, so unexpected in its genuine concern, cracked something in her chest. Stable. The last treatment cycle showed promising results. The doctors are cautiously optimistic, which is the most hope we've had in months. Good. The single word carried weight. When this is over, I'll connect you with a specialist in New York. Dr. Chen, his pioneering immunotherapy treatments, owes me several favors. Violet's throat tightened. You don't have to. I'm protecting my investment, he said, but his tone was too gentle to match the mercenary words. Can't have my girlfriend distracted by worry, can I? Girlfriend. Even pretend, the word sent warmth through her veins. Speaking of which, she managed, we need physical details. These things convince people, how you take your coffee, which side of the bed you prefer, the things couples know without thinking. Dominic's gaze intensified. I take my coffee black, 2 sugars, but only in the morning. Afternoon, straight espresso. I sleep on the left side, poorly, usually 4 hours a night. I have a scar on my right shoulder from a knife fight when I was 17. He paused. Your turn. Violet swallowed. Coffee with cream, no sugar. I sleep on the right side, usually curled up. I have a birthmark on my lower back shaped like a crescent moon, and I'm ticklish behind my left knee. Something dark and hungry flickered in his eyes. Noted. The air between them crackled. Thomas appeared from the cockpit area, breaking the moment. Boss, just got word from Chicago. Adrian moved up his gallery event to tonight. Mirabel will be there, but so will several Bratva associates. Dominic's jaw tightened. Then we go tonight. Violet and I make our entrance as a couple, very public, very visible. Adrian won't make a move with witnesses. There's another complication. Thomas handed Dominic a phone displaying a text message. Mirabel sent this 10 minutes ago. Violet watched Dominic's expression darken as he read. When he looked up, there was murder in his eyes barely contained. What is it? She asked. Mirabel's pregnant. The words came out carefully controlled. She just found out. Adrian doesn't know yet, and she's terrified of telling him because she doesn't know if the baby becomes leverage or liability in his plans. The stakes had just multiplied exponentially. Violet's mind raced. A pregnant woman is harder to extract. She can't exactly run, can't be stressed. Which is why tonight has to work perfectly. Dominic stood, pacing the narrow aisle like a caged predator. We get her alone, convince her to leave with us voluntarily, make it look like a sister bonding moment. By the time Adrian realizes she's gone, we'll have her somewhere he can't reach. And if he does realize, if he tries to stop us. Dominic's hand moved to his hip, where Violet now noticed the outline of a concealed weapon. Then things get complicated. She should be terrified. Should demand he turn the plane around, should run back to her safe, boring, predictable life. Instead, she stood and crossed to him, surprising herself with her boldness. Then we make sure he doesn't realize. We're a couple in love, remember. Absorbed in each other, no threat to anyone. She reached up, straightening his collar in an intimate gesture that felt both natural and electric. Teach me how to act like I'm yours. Dominic went very still under her touch, his eyes searching her face. Violet. We have 2 hours until we land. If we're going to convince dangerous people we're together, we need to be comfortable with each other. So. Her heart hammered, but she held his gaze. Practice with me. His hand came up slowly, cupping her cheek with a gentleness that contradicted everything his reputation promised. His thumb traced her lower lip, and her breath hitched. Couples touch unconsciously, he murmured, his voice rough. Small things. A hand at the small of your back. His other hand demonstrated, sending heat spiraling through her. Playing with your hair when I'm thinking. His fingers slid into the hair at her nape, and her eyes fluttered closed. Kissing your temple when I'm feeling protective. His lips brushed her temple, feather-light, and she gasped softly. And when I want to make sure everyone in the room knows you're mine. He tilted her face up, his mouth hovering just above hers, sharing breath. I'd kiss you like I'm starving and your salvation. Violet's hands clutched his shirt, her body swaying toward his. We should probably practice that too. For authenticity. Violet. Her name was a warning and a prayer. You're vulnerable right now. Heartbroken. I won't take advantage. I'm giving permission. Her eyes opened, meeting his. I'm choosing this. Maybe for the wrong reasons, maybe because I want to forget Jake exists, but I'm choosing you right now. So kiss me, Dominic. Show me how to be convincing. The last thread of his restraint snapped. His mouth claimed hers with controlled intensity, not rough but thorough, tasting and learning. Violet melted into him, her hand sliding up to his shoulders as his arm banded around her waist, pulling her flush against him. The kiss deepened, and she opened for him, meeting his tongue with her own in a dance that felt both brand new and inevitable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. That, he said roughly, is going to be very convincing. Violet laughed shakily. Good. Because I forgot how to think, so it better serve a purpose. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. We're going to get through tonight, Violet. We'll get Mirabel out, keep her and the baby safe, and then. He paused. Then we'll figure out what this is between us. And if it's just adrenaline and proximity. His thumb stroked her cheek. Then it's the best damn adrenaline I've ever experienced. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Beginning our descent into Chicago. Arrival in 20 minutes. Reality rushed back. In 20 minutes, they'd step off this plane into a world where one wrong move could get them killed. Where Violet would have to pretend to be someone she wasn't, for stakes she'd never imagined. But as Dominic's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing naturally, she realized she wasn't pretending about everything. The attraction was real. The connection was real. And that might be the most dangerous truth of all. The gallery was all glass and steel elegance, positioned in Chicago's River North district where money whispered instead of shouted. Violet stepped out of the town car on Dominic's arm, wearing a dress they'd purchased during a whirlwind stop at a boutique. Midnight blue silk that clung and flowed in equal measure, making her feel like someone capable of belonging in this world. Dominic's hand at her waist was warm, possessive, real. He'd barely let her out of touching distance since they'd landed. Remember, he murmured against her ear as they approached the entrance, we're madly in love. You're showing me that life exists outside of business. I'm reformed, softened, distracted. Distracted, she repeated, looking up at him through her lashes. I can work with that. His eyes darkened. You're dangerously good at this. Maybe I'm not pretending as much as I should be. The confession hung between them as they entered the gallery. Immediately, Violet's senses were overwhelmed. Contemporary art in bold strokes and defiant colors, champagne flowing, beautiful people in expensive clothes making beautiful conversation. And there, across the room, was Mirabel. She was stunning in person, her dark hair swept up, her smile practiced and empty. The man beside her, Adrian, had his hand on her lower back in a grip that looked casual but read as control. Blonde, classically handsome, with cold blue eyes that swept the room like a predator cataloging prey. Those eyes landed on Dominic and went arctic. "Showtime," Dominic whispered, then guided Violet forward with confident strides. Mirabel saw them first, and the flash of desperate hope in her eyes before she controlled her expression broke Violet's heart. "Dom." Mirabel's voice carried perfectly calibrated surprise. "You didn't tell me you were coming to Chicago." Last-minute decision. Dominic pulled Violet closer. "Bella, I want you to meet someone special. This is Violet Keller." "Violet, my sister Mirabel." Violet extended her hand, channeling every ounce of warmth she could. "I've heard so much about you. Dominic talks about you constantly." Mirabel's handshake was brief, but she pressed a piece of paper into Violet's palm so quickly no one else would have noticed. "How wonderful. And this is my husband, Adrian." Adrian's smile was all charm and no soul. "Dominic, finally bringing a date to meet family. I'm shocked." His accent carried the faintest trace of Eastern Europe, smoothed by expensive American education. "You must be very special, Miss Keller." "I like to think so," Violet said lightly, tucking the note into her clutch. "Dominic's been trying to culture me. I'm afraid I'm a terrible student. I still can't tell a Picasso from a Pollock." Adrian laughed, and some of the tension eased. "Beauty doesn't require education. You wear that dress better than any art in this room." Dominic's hand tightened on her waist. Real jealousy, or excellent acting? "Careful, Adrian. I'm a possessive man. As all men should be with treasures." Adrian's smile sharpened. "Mirabel, darling, why don't you show Violet the Rothko in the back gallery? It's quite stunning. Dominic and I can catch up." It was a test, Violet realized. Separating them to see if Dominic would allow it, to gauge how much he trusted her. Dominic looked down at her, and his eyes communicated volumes. "Get her alone. Get her to talk." "I'd love to see it," Violet said, kissing Dominic's cheek with comfortable intimacy. "Try not to talk business the whole time I'm gone." "No promises," he murmured, then let her go. Walking away from him felt like leaving safety behind. Mirabel led her through the crowd with practiced grace, smiling and nodding at guests. Only when they reached a quieter corridor did her composure crack. "Thank God you're here," Mirabel whispered urgently. "Did Dominic tell you?" "About the baby, yes. And what Adrian really is." Violet pulled out the note, unfolding it quickly. "Adrian knows Dom is coming. This is a trap. Get out now." Violet's blood turned to ice. "Mirabel, how does he know?" "I don't know, but this afternoon he was on the phone speaking Russian, and I heard your name. Violet Keller. He knows who you are, which means he knows you work for Dominic, which means," her voice broke. "This whole thing is a setup. You need to get Dom out of here before." "Before what?" The new voice spun them both around. Jake stood there, emerging from a side office, wearing an expensive suit Violet had never seen before. Her brain struggled to process his presence, to make sense of why her ex-boyfriend would be in Chicago at an art gallery connected to the Russian Bratva. "Jake." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "What are you doing here?" His smile was apologetic, almost pitiful. "I'm sorry, Vi. I really am. You were never supposed to be part of this." Understanding crashed over her like a wave. "You work for them. For Adrian. For the Bratva." "Work for? Baby, I am them." Jake stepped closer, and Violet noticed the gun tucked into his waistband, casual as a phone. "Jake Morrison is just a cover. My real name is Yakov Morozov. I'm Adrian's cousin." The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that Violet actually laughed. "The photo. Oh my God, the photo wasn't an accident, was it? You asked me to send it, knew I'd be nervous, knew I might make a mistake. We needed leverage on Costigan. Something personal. When you sent that photo to him instead of me, I thought we'd lost our chance." Jake's expression was almost admiring. "But then he kept you on, started acting protective. You became useful in ways we hadn't anticipated. Mirabel grabbed Violet's arm. We need to warn Dominic. Dominic already knows he walked into a trap, Jake said calmly. What he doesn't know is that the FBI is raiding this location in approximately 8 minutes. Anonymous tip about illegal weapons dealing. When they arrive, they'll find a Mafia boss, several known associates, and enough planted evidence to put him away for 20 years. Violet's mind raced. You're eliminating him using the law. No gang war, no retaliation. Just a clean removal of our biggest obstacle to East Coast expansion. Jake pulled out his phone, checking the time. Adrian's keeping him occupied in the main gallery. By the time Dominic realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. And us? Violet demanded. What happens to Mirabel and me? Mirabel goes back to being the grieving wife whose criminal brother-in-law destroyed her marriage. You. Jake actually looked regretful. You disappear, Vi. Can't have you testifying about what you know about Bratva operations. But I'll make it quick. For what we had. 2 years of her life, all a lie. All manipulation to position her as a pawn in a game she'd never known she was playing. But Jake had made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated what those 2 years had taught her. She'd learned to read people, to spot lies, to think 3 moves ahead. And more importantly, he'd underestimated what a few hours with Dominic Costigan had awakened in her. Violet's hand moved to her clutch. You're going to let us walk out of here? Jake laughed. Or what? You going to shoot me with your lipstick? No. Violet pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over the send button. But I'm going to send the recording of this entire conversation to every major news outlet in Chicago. Turns out my phone's been recording since we entered this corridor. Amazing what technology can do. It was a bluff, she hadn't started recording, but Jake's eyes flickered to her phone with uncertainty. Mirabel, bless her, caught on instantly. Russian Bratva infiltrating American businesses, using the FBI as a weapon, murdering innocent women. That's front-page news, Yakov. Your whole operation burns. You're bluffing, Jake said, but his hand moved toward his gun. Try me. Violet's voice was steel. I've lost everything in the past 24 hours except my life and my integrity. You really think I won't burn your world down out of spite? 4-3 heartbeats, the corridor was silent except for distant gallery sounds. Then Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, cursed in Russian. Adrian says let them go. Not worth the exposure. Smart. Violet grabbed Mirabel's hand. We're walking out the back exit. You're going to smile and nod to your cousin like everything's fine. And then you're going to give us a 5-minute head start before you warn anyone we're gone. Dominic's still trapped, Jake said, almost gently. You can't save him and Mirabel both. The FBI will be here in 6 minutes. Choose. It was a sadist's choice, but Violet didn't hesitate. Mirabel is pregnant and innocent. Dominic knew the risks. Even as she said it, her heart shredded. He'd want her safe. She pulled Mirabel toward the back exit, moving fast, her mind screaming at her to go back, to warn Dominic, to not leave him to face this alone. They burst into the alley behind the gallery, the cool night air a shock after the climate-controlled interior. We can't just leave him. Mirabel sobbed. Violet, he's my brother. And he's the man Violet cut herself off, but the truth hung there anyway. In less than a day, Dominic Costigan had become more real to her than 2 years with Jake ever had. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Trust me. Get Mirabel to the Four Seasons, room 2847. You're not the only one who can plan ahead. D. Hope exploded in her chest. He knew. Dominic knew this was a trap and planned for it. A black SUV pulled up to the alley entrance, and Thomas stepped out. Miss Keller, Miss Mirabel. Boss says to get you somewhere safe. Quickly, please. As they climbed into the vehicle, Violet looked back at the gallery, her heart with the man still inside. Where is he? She asked Thomas. Is he safe? Thomas's smile was grim. Boss is never without contingencies, Miss Keller. He's been 3 steps ahead of the Bratva since before you landed in Chicago. The SUV pulled away just as sirens wailed in the distance. Violet closed her eyes, Mirabel crying softly beside her, and prayed that Dominic's contingencies were as good as his kiss. Because somewhere between a mistaken photo and a fake relationship, she'd done the most dangerous thing possible. She'd fallen for the Mafia boss. And now she might have lost him before she could tell him it had stopped being pretend. The 4-season suite was all luxury and safety, but Violet felt neither luxurious nor safe. She paced the floor like a caged animal while Mirabel sat on the couch, hands protectively over her still flat stomach, tears streaming silently down her face. Thomas stood by the door, phone pressed to his ear, his expression growing darker with each passing moment. "What's happening?" Violet demanded for the 3rd time. "Where is he?" Thomas held up a finger. "Wait." Then his jaw clenched, and he lowered the phone. "FBI took him into custody 6 minutes ago. They found him in the gallery office with documents Adrian's people planted, shipping manifests for illegal weapons, transaction records, everything needed for a federal trafficking charge." The room tilted. Violet grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. But he knew it was a trap. He said he had contingencies. He did. He has lawyers en route, judges who owe favors, people working to unravel the planted evidence. Thomas's voice was carefully controlled. But the Bratva was thorough. This isn't something that gets fixed in a few hours. Maybe not even a few days. Days. Mirabel's voice broke. "They'll move him to federal holding, Thomas. You know what happens to men like Dom in custody. The Bratva has people everywhere. Guards, inmates, they'll kill him before he ever sees a courtroom." The words landed like bullets. Violet's knees went weak as the full horror crystallized. Dominic wasn't just arrested, he was exposed, vulnerable, a target in a cage with nowhere to run. "We have to do something," Violet said, but even she could hear the desperation, the helplessness. Thomas's phone buzzed. He read the message, his expression darkening further. Boss sent instructions. "Miss Mirabel, you're being moved to a secure location upstate within the hour. There's a private doctor there who'll monitor your pregnancy, security that can't be breached." "And Violet?" Mirabel asked. The silence that followed was deafening. "Miss Keller is being sent back to her apartment," Thomas said finally. "Boss says to resume normal life, distance yourself from him, cooperate fully if the FBI questions you. He's protecting you by cutting ties." The words hit like a physical blow. "No. Absolutely not. I'm not abandoning him." "You don't have a choice, Miss Keller." Thomas's voice gentled. "The boss is right. Your association with him puts a target on your back. The Bratva knows you helped Mirabel escape. If you stay visible, stay connected, they'll use you to hurt him. Your best protection is invisibility." "I don't want protection, I want," her voice cracked. "I want him. There has to be something I can do." Thomas's phone buzzed again. He read the message, then wordlessly handed her the phone. "Violet, I'm sorry. For dragging you into this, for that kiss, for making you care. You deserved better than becoming collateral damage in my world. The lawyers will ensure you're not charged as an accessory. Take the severance payment in your account, enough for your mother's treatments and then some. Forget you ever knew me. Live the safe, normal life you should have had. D." Violet read it once, twice, 3 times, each word carving out a piece of her heart. He was cutting her loose. Protecting her the only way he knew how, by pushing her away. "I need to see him." Her voice was hollow. "Thomas, please. Get me into wherever they're holding him. 5 minutes. That's all I need." "Impossible. He's in federal custody at the Metropolitan Correctional Center. No visits except lawyers, and you're not." Thomas stopped, studying her face. "You really care about him?" The admission stuck in her throat, too big and too terrifying. "I barely know him. It's been less than 2 days. This is insane, it's not real, it can't be. Love doesn't follow timelines, Miss Keller." Thomas's expression softened. "I've worked for Dominic for 8 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you on that plane. Like you were air and he'd been drowning. The word love hung between them, impossible and inevitable. Mirabel stood, crossing to Violet and taking her hands. He'll survive this. My brother is the most resilient person I've ever known. But Violet, her eyes were earnest, pleading. He can only survive if he's not worried about protecting you. If you really care about him, the best thing you can do is exactly what he asked. Disappear. Be safe. Let him fight without that distraction. Every instinct screamed against it. But logically, terrifyingly, Mirabel was right. Violet was a liability. An accountant playing at espionage, a normal woman in an extraordinary world. She'd help tonight, yes, but luck wouldn't hold forever. Eventually, her inexperience would get someone killed. Maybe even Dominic. Okay, she whispered, each word tasting like ash. I'll go home. I'll cooperate with the FBI. I'll disappear. Thomas nodded approval and began making calls. Mirabel hugged her tightly, whispering thanks for her help, for her sacrifice. 2 hours later, Violet was back in her Showbox apartment, still wearing the midnight blue dress that smelled like Dominic's cologne. The city lights glittered beyond her window, indifferent to her breaking heart. Her phone sat silent on the counter. No calls from Dominic, of course not, he was in federal custody. No calls from Jake, Yakov, she corrected bitterly. Her entire life had been revealed as a carefully constructed lie. She'd never really known her boyfriend of 2 years. She'd known a Mafia boss for less than 24 hours and felt more seen than in her entire life. The cruelty of that irony wasn't lost on her. A knock at her door made her freeze. It was past midnight. Who would? Miss Keller. FBI. We need to ask you some questions. Her stomach dropped. So it begins. She opened the door to find 2 agents, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a younger man whose expression gave nothing away. Agent Sarah Dawson, this is Agent Michael Park, the woman said, showing credentials. We understand you work for Dominic Costigan. May we come in? Violet stepped aside, her mind racing through everything Dominic had told her to say. Cooperate. Tell them nothing that matters. Survive. The next 3 hours were a masterclass in psychological warfare. The agents knew about her employment, her mother's medical bills, her relationship with Jake. They knew she'd been in Chicago tonight, knew she'd helped Mirabel disappear. What they didn't know was where Mirabel had gone, or what Dominic's real operations entailed beyond what they'd already documented. He's using you, Agent Dawson said gently. Men like Costigan, they're experts at manipulation. He paid you well, probably made you feel special, important. But you're just another tool to him, Miss Keller. He kissed me like I was salvation, Violet thought but didn't say. I was just his assistant, she said instead, her voice flat. I managed his legitimate business interests. I don't know anything about illegal activities. Then why were you in Chicago? He invited me for dinner. I thought, she let her voice break, channeling real emotion into a fake narrative. I thought we were becoming close. I didn't realize it was about his sister's situation until we were already there. It went on like that. Truth twisted just enough to protect everyone except herself. She confirmed her employment, admitted to being in Chicago, claimed ignorance about everything that mattered. Finally, mercifully, they left with warnings about maintaining availability for further questioning and not leaving the city. Violet collapsed on her couch as dawn crept through the windows, exhausted and hollowed out. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You did well with the FBI. Now here's what happens next. You're going to visit your mother tomorrow at the hospital. While you're there, you'll be approached by a nurse named Katia. She'll give you a choice, information on Dominic's location in exchange for information on Mirabel's location. How you answer will determine whether Costigan survives the week. Choose wisely. A friend. Adrian. It had to be. The Bratva wasn't done with her. Violet's hands shook as she read it again. They were going to use her mother as leverage, force her to betray either Dominic or Mirabel. The woman she'd become in the past 24 hours, brave, capable, dangerous, crumbled away, leaving only terrified Violet, who'd spent her life trying to protect the few people she loved. She couldn't save everyone. Couldn't be the hero. Couldn't. Her phone rang. Riley's name lit up the screen. Riley. Violet's voice cracked. How did you know what's happening? Babe, half the city knows the FBI arrested Dominic Costigan. Riley's voice was tight with concern. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over? And suddenly, the dam broke. Violet sobbed, months of stress and fear and heartbreak pouring out in ugly, gasping waves. I don't know what to do. Riley, I don't know how to fix this. Hey, breathe. Tell me everything. So she did. All of it, the photo, the trip to Chicago, Jake's betrayal, her feelings for Dominic, the impossible choice the Bratva was forcing. Riley listened without interruption until Violet had nothing left to say. Okay, Riley said finally. First, Jake, Yakov, whatever, can rot in hell. Second, you're in way over your head, but Vi, that doesn't mean you're helpless. Third, and most important, do you love him? Dominic. The question stopped Violet's spiral. Did she love him? After less than 2 days. After one kiss and 100 touches that felt like promises. I don't know, she whispered. But I know that the thought of him dying while I do nothing makes me want to die too. I know that he looked at me like I mattered, like I was powerful, like I could be extraordinary. I know that for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen. Then you have your answer, Riley said softly. Love isn't about timelines, Vi. It's about recognition. He recognized you. And you recognized him. That's rare. That's worth fighting for. But how? I'm nobody. I have no training, no resources, no. You have me. And through me, you have access to every bartender, server, and coat check girl in this city's underground scene. People who see everything, hear everything, and owe me favors. Riley's voice hardened with determination. You want to save your Mafia boss? Then stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like his partner. What would Dominic do? Violet closed her eyes, her mind clearing for the first time in hours. What would Dominic do? He'd use every resource. He'd find the leverage. He'd turn the enemy's trap into his weapon. And he'd do it for the people he loved. Violet Keller had spent her entire life being invisible, being safe, being small. Maybe it was time to be dangerous instead. Violet stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 6 a.m., studying the woman reflected back at her. The scared girl who'd accidentally sent a photo to the wrong person felt like a lifetime ago, even though it had been less than 48 hours. She'd spent the remainder of the night planning with Riley, and now it was time to execute. First stop, her mother. The hospital room was filled with early morning light when Violet entered. Her mother, Christine Keller, the woman who'd given her up but fought to earn her forgiveness, looked frail against the white sheets but smiled when she saw her daughter. Sweetheart, I didn't expect you this early. Christine's voice was weak but warm. Is everything all right? Violet kissed her mother's forehead, hyper-aware that somewhere in this hospital, a Bratva operative posing as a nurse was watching, waiting. Everything's fine, Mom. I just wanted to see you. They talked for 20 minutes about inconsequential things, Christine's latest treatment results, promising, the terrible hospital food, unchanged, the flowers Violet had sent earlier that week, lovely. Then a nurse entered. Blonde, early 30s, name tag reading Katia. Here we go. Mrs. Keller, time for your vitals, Katia said with a slight Eastern European accent that confirmed Violet's suspicions. Miss Keller, there's fresh coffee in the family lounge if you'd like to step out for a moment. The family lounge. Private. Perfect for threats. Violet squeezed her mother's hand and followed Katia out, her heart hammering but her expression calm. Riley's words echoed. Think like his partner. The lounge was empty. Katia closed the door and dropped all pretense of medical professionalism. You know why I'm here, she said bluntly. Mirabel Costigan's location. You give it to me, I tell you which guard at the MCC is ours, which time block Dominic is most vulnerable. You can warn his people, maybe save his life. And if I don't? Katia's smile was cold. Your mother's 4 gets a little something extra in it. Painless, looks like complications from her cancer. No one would question it. There it was. The threat Violet had been expecting. The old Violet would have crumbled. Would have begged, negotiated, tried to find a middle ground that didn't exist. The new Violet, the one Dominic's faith had forged, smiled back. You're not going to touch my mother, Violet said calmly. And I'm not giving you Mirabel. Want to know why? Katia's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Because 40 minutes ago, I sent a very detailed email to Agent Sarah Dawson of the FBI. Violet pulled out her phone, showing the sent message. Complete with photos I took of you entering this hospital, your real name, Katia Volkov, Adrian's half-sister, and a recording of this entire conversation. Katia's hand moved toward her pocket, but Violet was faster, stepping back. The recording is already uploaded to a cloud server with automatic distribution if I don't check in every hour, Violet continued, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. You kill me, you kill my mother, you even breathe wrong, and the FBI gets everything. Adrian's operation in Chicago burns. His cover as a legitimate businessman evaporates. You lose everything. For 5 long seconds, Katia just stared at her. Then she laughed, genuine, surprised laughter. Dominic trained you well. Dominic didn't train me. He just showed me I was already capable. Violet's voice softened slightly. Now here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to tell me which guard is yours at MCC, what time they're planning to move against Dominic, and what the Bratva's endgame is. And in exchange, I don't destroy your brother's life's work. Why would I believe you'd keep that bargain? Because unlike Adrian, I'm not interested in empire building or power plays. I just want Dominic alive. You help me save him, and Mirabel stays hidden. Everyone gets what they want. Violet stepped closer. But if Dominic dies, I have nothing left to lose. And a woman with nothing to lose is the most dangerous enemy you can make. Katia studied her for a long moment, then pulled out her phone and brought up a photo. A guard, mid-40s, hard eyes. Sergei Petrov. Works the night shift, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Tomorrow night, he's supposed to engineer a fight in Dominic's cell block. Dominic gets caught in the crossfire, accidental casualty, tragic but not suspicious. Tomorrow night, Violet repeated, memorizing the guard's face. What's the endgame? Why go through all this to eliminate Dominic? Territory. With Costigan gone, the Bratva consolidates East Coast operations. No competition, no resistance. We become the only game in town. Katia pocketed her phone. But here's something your Mafia boss probably didn't tell you. The FBI's evidence against him is real. Not all planted. They've been building a case for months. Adrian just accelerated the timeline. The revelation hit like cold water. Dominic knew he was under investigation. Of course he knew. Why do you think he was trying to distance his sister, clean up his operations? He was preparing for this, just not this soon. Katia moved toward the door, then paused. You're in love with him. I can see it. But love doesn't change what he is, Miss Keller. Even if you save him tomorrow, eventually, this life catches everyone. Including you. Then she was gone, leaving Violet alone with the truth. Dominic had known the walls were closing in. Had known that disaster was inevitable. And he'd still kissed her, still pulled her into his world, still looked at her like she was his salvation. Maybe because he'd known his time was running out, and he'd wanted something real before the end. Violet returned to her mother's room, kissed her goodbye, and promised to visit again soon. Then she stepped into the hospital hallway and called Thomas. I have the information, she said without preamble. But I need something in return. Can you get me into MCC? I need to see Dominic before tomorrow night. Miss Keller, that's impossible. His lawyer can request a meeting with his executive assistant regarding business continuity. I still technically work for him, right? There are legitimate questions about company operations that need addressing. Her mind raced, assembling the pieces. And while we're at it, I need you to contact someone for me. Someone who has just as much reason to want the Bratva stopped as we do.
Who?
Violet smiled, the plan crystallizing with perfect clarity. Agent Sarah Dawson. Because I'm about to offer the FBI something they want more than Dominic Costigan, I'm going to give them the entire Chicago Bratva operation. But only if they agree to my terms. Thomas was silent for a moment. Boss is going to kill me for letting you do this. Boss is going to thank you when it works. Violet's voice held a confidence she was only half faking. Trust me, Thomas. I'm done being the damsel in distress. Time to be the queen on the chessboard. Queens are the most powerful piece, Thomas said slowly, but also the most targeted. Then it's good I learned from the best. She thought of Dominic's careful strategy, his ability to turn traps into opportunities. Make the calls, Thomas. We have less than 36 hours to pull this off. She hung up and stood in the hospital parking lot, the morning sun warm on her face. Somewhere across the city, Dominic sat in a cell, probably assuming she was safe at home, following his instructions to disappear. He was about to learn that Violet Keller didn't follow instructions well. Not when the man she loved, yes, loved, she could admit it now, needed her. Her phone buzzed. Riley, with a text. My network came through. Adrian's meeting with his Bratva contacts tomorrow at noon, warehouse in Red Hook. Want me to keep digging? Violet smiled and typed back. Yes. And Riley. Thank you for reminding me who I am. Who are you? Violet looked at her reflection in her car window, the woman in the hospital parking lot wearing determination like armor. Someone who saves the people she loves. No matter what it costs. By tomorrow night, either she'd have saved Dominic Costigan and dismantled the Bratva's operation, or she'd be dead. But at least she'd die being extraordinary instead of invisible. And somehow, she knew Dominic would appreciate that. 3 hours later, Violet sat across from Agent Sarah Dawson in a coffee shop far from federal buildings and official surveillance. You're taking an enormous risk meeting me, Agent Dawson said, her sharp eyes assessing. Your lawyer would advise against this. I don't have a lawyer. I have information. Violet slid a folder across the table. Everything in there is verifiable, locations, names, transaction records of the Chicago Bratva operation. Adrian Sokolov, his real identity, his marriage to Mirabel Costigan as part of an infiltration strategy, his plan to consolidate East Coast territory. Agent Dawson flipped through the pages, her expression growing more interested with each one. Where did you get this? From people who are tired of living in fear. From bartenders who overhear conversations, servers who clear tables and pocket forgotten notes, drivers who know where bodies are buried. Violet leaned forward. The underground isn't loyal to the Bratva, Agent Dawson. They're just afraid. Give them protection, and they'll give you everything. And what do you want in exchange? Here was the moment. The gamble that would either save Dominic or destroy them both. Dominic Costigan's charges reduced to time served and probation. He cooperates with your investigation into the Bratva, provides testimony, helps you build an airtight case. In return, he walks away from his organization, goes legitimate for real this time. Agent Dawson laughed. You're asking me to let a mafia boss walk free. I'm asking you to choose your battles. Violet's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. You can spend years trying to build a case against Dominic that might not stick, he's careful, smart, always 10 steps ahead. Or you can take down an organization that's actively expanding, violently consolidating power, and planning to become the biggest criminal enterprise on the East Coast. What matters more, one man or an empire? The agent was quiet, considering. There's something else, Violet added. Tomorrow night, a guard named Sergei Petrov is going to try to kill Dominic in MCC. You prevent that, you keep Dominic alive to testify, and you have leverage over him. He'll cooperate to avoid going back into custody where the Bratva can reach him. You seem very invested in keeping Costigan alive, Miss Keller. Violet met her eyes without flinching. I love him. I know that sounds insane, I've known him for 2 days. But in those 2 days, he showed me I could be brave, powerful, capable of more than I'd ever imagined. So yes, I'm invested. But that doesn't make my information less valuable. Agent Dawson studied her for a long moment. If I agree to this, and that's a big if, Costigan would have to wear a wire, testify in open court, make himself a permanent target for retribution. His life as he knows it ends. His life as he knows it already ended the moment the FBI arrested him. Violet's voice softened. I'm offering him a chance at a different life. One where he gets to be more than his worst choices. Don't we all deserve that chance? The agent's expression flickered with something almost like sympathy. I'll take this to my superiors. No promises, Miss Keller. But if, and only if, this intelligence checks out, we'll consider your proposal. It wasn't a yes. But it wasn't a no. Violet left the coffee shop feeling like she'd just run a marathon and won by inches. Her phone buzzed with a message from Thomas. Lawyer meeting approved for tomorrow, 2 p.m. You'll have 20 minutes with him. Make them count. 20 minutes to see Dominic. To tell him she loved him. To convince him to take the deal that would save his life but cost him everything he'd built. 20 minutes to change both their futures. Violet stood on the street corner, the city moving around her in organized chaos, and felt something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, impossible hope. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either they'd both walk away free, or they'd burn together. But at least they'd burn bright. The Metropolitan Correctional Center smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. Violet sat in a sterile meeting room, hands clasped on the metal table, trying to control her racing heart as a guard brought Dominic in. He looked, diminished wasn't the right word. Dangerous in a different way. His jaw was shadowed with stubble, his prison-issued clothing couldn't mask the coiled tension in his body, but his eyes, those smoke and fire eyes, went wide when he saw her. Violet. Her name was a prayer and a curse. What the hell are you doing here? I told you to disappear, to stay safe. When have I ever done what I'm told? She stood as the guard removed his handcuffs, waited until they were alone. Relatively, the guard stood outside the windowed door, then crossed to him. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? His hands came up to frame her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything about this place. I'm fine. But you shouldn't be here. Violet, if the Bratva knows you're visiting me. The Bratva already knows. They tried to use my mother as leverage this morning. She watched fury flash across his features. I handled it. You handled the Russian Bratva. His tone was caught between pride and terror. Violet. I made a deal with the FBI. She spoke quickly, knowing their time was limited. They're considering dropping most of your charges in exchange for your testimony against the Bratva. Full cooperation, witness protection if needed, but Dominic, you'd have to walk away from everything. Your organization, your territory, your entire life. He went very still. You negotiated with federal agents on my behalf. I gave them intelligence that'll take down Adrian's entire operation. Locations, names, everything Riley's network could gather. In return, you get a second chance at a legitimate life. Her hands gripped his shirt. But there's more. Tonight, a guard named Sergei Petrov is planning to kill you during the night shift. The FBI knows now, they'll move you to protective custody this afternoon, but Dominic, we need you alive to testify. You have to agree to the deal. Dominic's hand slid into her hair, his forehead pressing against hers. You magnificent, terrifying woman. Do you have any idea what you've risked? Do you have any idea what you've given me? Her voice cracked. 2 days ago, I was invisible, scared, small. You looked at me and saw someone powerful, someone capable of extraordinary things. You were right. So let me save you, the way you saved me. I didn't save you. You did. You just didn't realize it. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I love you. I know it's insane, I know it's too fast, but I love you and I'm not letting you die in here when there's a chance at something more for both of us. The kiss was inevitable. Dominic pulled her against him like she was oxygen and he'd been suffocating, his mouth claiming hers with desperate intensity. Violet kissed him back with everything she had, All her fear and hope and love poured into this moment. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic's eyes were suspiciously bright. "I love you too," he said roughly. "From that first moment in the gallery when you pretended to know nothing about art, but I caught you analyzing the Rothko like you understood exactly what the artist was trying to convey. I knew then you were dangerous to my carefully controlled world. So you'll take the deal?" His jaw clenched. "Walking away from my organization means leaving a power vacuum. People who depend on me for protection, for income. Thomas can manage the transition. You've been going legitimate anyway. You said so yourself. This just accelerates the timeline." Violet gripped his hands. "Please, Dominic. Choose life. Choose us." Before he could answer, the door burst open. Agent Dawson stood there with 3 other agents, her expression urgent. "We need to move now," she said. "We just intercepted communications. The Bratva moved up their timeline. They're hitting this facility in 20 minutes, not tonight. Full assault to either extract or eliminate you, Costigan." Dominic immediately shifted into tactical mode. "How many?" "Unknown. But we're evacuating you to a secure location." Dawson's eyes flicked to Violet. "Miss Keller, you need to come too. Adrian knows about your FBI cooperation. There's a bounty on your head." Violet's stomach dropped. "My mother." "Already being moved to a secure facility. We anticipated this." Dawson was already moving. "Now let's go, both of you." The next 10 minutes were chaos. Agents surrounded them as they moved through the facility's back corridors. Alarms began blaring, the assault had started early, or the intel had been wrong about timing. Gunfire erupted from somewhere above them. Dominic grabbed Violet, shielding her with his body as agents returned fire. "Stay down." "We're pinned," one agent shouted. They breached the north entrance. "Then we go south," Dominic said with absolute authority. Even in handcuffs, even in federal custody, he commanded the situation. "There's a service tunnel that exits 2 blocks away. Built during the Cold War, still accessible from the basement level." Agent Dawson made a split-second decision. "Show us." They moved as a unit through corridors Violet barely registered, her hand locked in Dominic's, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was real, bullets, danger, death so close she could smell the cordite in the air. But Dominic's hand was steady, his presence calm, and somehow that made her brave. They reached the basement. Dominic directed them to a maintenance door that looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. 2 agents forced it open, revealing a dark tunnel stretching into blackness. "Go," Dominic urged Violet forward. "Don't stop until you're out." "Not without you." Footsteps thundered behind them. Bratva soldiers poured into the basement, weapons raised. Everything happened at once. Agent Dawson shoved Violet into the tunnel. Dominic turned to face their pursuers, even handcuffed, positioning himself as a shield. Agents returned fire, buying precious seconds. And then Violet saw him, Adrian Sokolov himself, emerging from the group with a gun trained directly on Dominic. "You should have stayed out of my business, Costigan," Adrian said, his handsome face twisted with rage. "Now I take everything from you, your organization, your sister, your life." Time slowed. Adrian's finger tightened on the trigger. Violet didn't think. She launched herself from the tunnel entrance, grabbing a dropped weapon from a fallen agent, and fired. She'd never shot a gun before. Had no training, no experience. But Riley's self-defense lessons from college kicked in, muscle memory guiding her hands, and the bullet found its target, Adrian's shoulder, spinning him around as his shot went wide. Agents swarmed, subduing Adrian and the remaining Bratva soldiers in a coordinated takedown that spoke of extensive training. Violet stood there, weapon trembling in her hands, ears ringing, barely processing what she'd done. Dominic was there suddenly, his handcuffed hands gently prying the gun from her grip. "You're okay. Violet, you're safe. Look at me." She met his eyes, and the world snapped back into focus. "I shot him," she whispered. "You saved my life," Dominic corrected, his voice filled with awe. "You extraordinary woman, you saved my life." Agent Dawson approached, holstering her weapon. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever witnessed, Miss Keller." "Probably both," Violet managed, then her knees gave out. Dominic caught her, supporting her weight despite his restraints. "I've got you. I've got you." 4 hours later, they sat in a safe house outside the city. Dominic's handcuffs had been removed. Adrian Sokolov was in custody, singing like a canary about Bratva operations to reduce his own charges. The assault on MCC had given the FBI everything they needed: evidence of organized crime, attempted murder of federal witnesses, the works. The deal was simple: Dominic's full cooperation in exchange for time served and probation. He'd walk away free, but monitored. His organization would dissolve, his legitimate businesses would continue under new management, and he'd spend the next 5 years proving he could exist outside the criminal world. "It's not the life you had," Agent Dawson said as she prepared to leave them for the night. "But it's a life. More than most in your position get." When they were finally alone, Violet sat beside Dominic on the safe house couch, both of them still processing the day's events. "I can't believe you shot Adrian Sokolov," Dominic said, something like wonder in his voice. "I can't believe I negotiated with the FBI." Violet laughed shakily. "Who am I anymore? You're the woman who saved me." He turned to face her fully, his hand cupping her cheek. "You're the woman I love. The woman who's brave and brilliant and completely insane for thinking we could pull this off. But we did pull it off. We did." His smile was soft, genuine, transforming his entire face. "Mirabelle's safe, the Bratva's dismantled, and somehow, impossibly, we both survived. So what happens now?" Dominic's thumb traced her lower lip, the gesture achingly familiar from their practice session on the plane, a lifetime ago, though it had only been 2 days. "Now," he said quietly, "I build a legitimate life. Something worth having. Something I don't have to hide or defend or kill to protect." His eyes held hers. "And if you'll have me, if you can love a reformed criminal trying to be better, I'd like to build it with you." Violet's answer was a kiss that tasted like hope and new beginnings. When they broke apart, both smiling, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. "I should warn you," he murmured. "I have no idea how to be normal. How to have a regular relationship without danger and adrenaline. Then we'll figure it out together." Violet's fingers threaded through his hair. "Besides, after the past 48 hours, normal sounds perfect." Outside the safe house, the sun was setting on one life and rising on another. Tomorrow would bring paperwork, testimony, the slow process of building something new from the ashes of everything they'd been. But tonight, they had this, each other, alive, together, and finally safe. 6 months later, Violet stood in the doorway of the newly renovated office space, watching Dominic negotiate with contractors about the final touches. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating what would soon be the headquarters of Costigan Security Consulting. Completely legitimate, entirely legal, and surprisingly successful. Turned out that a former Mafia boss knew a lot about protection, risk assessment, and security systems. Corporations were paying premium rates for his expertise. No questions asked about his past. Well, some questions. But the FBI's endorsement helped smooth most concerns. "What do you think?" Dominic asked, crossing to wrap his arms around her waist from behind. 6 months together, and the touch still sent electricity through her veins. Too corporate. Not enough edge. "It's perfect." She leaned back against his chest. "Intimidating enough to be credible, legitimate enough to be respectable. Just like you." His laugh rumbled against her back. "Reformed criminal as brand identity. Never thought I'd see the day." But he had reformed, genuinely. The past 6 months had been a masterclass in transformation. Dominic testifying against Bratva operations, working with federal prosecutors, slowly dismantling his old organization and transitioning loyal people into legitimate businesses. It hadn't been easy or clean, but it had been real. And through it all, Violet had been beside him. She'd quit being his assistant and instead become his partner, in business and in life. Turned out her organizational skills and ability to read people translated beautifully into security consulting. Together, they'd built something neither could have created alone. "Your mother called," Dominic said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "She wants to know if we're still coming for dinner tomorrow." Violet smiled. Her mother's cancer was in remission, thanks to Dr. Chen's experimental treatment that Dominic had indeed arranged. Christine Keller had another chance at life, and she was using it to embarrass her daughter by constantly asking when Dominic was going to make an honest woman of her. "We'll be there. She's probably made enough food for an army again. She likes feeding me. Says I'm too skinny." Dominic's tone was warm with affection. He'd never had a maternal figure growing up. His own mother had died when he was young. Christine had adopted him into her heart with the same fierce love she showed Violet. Violet's phone buzzed. A text from Mirabel, who'd given birth 3 months ago to a healthy baby girl named Elena. Mirabel. Elena smiled today. Actual smile, not gas. "Also, I enrolled in that online art history program. Thank you for pushing me. Love you both." 2 hearts. Attached was a photo of the baby. Dark hair like her mother, thankfully nothing of her biological father in her features, grinning toothlessly at the camera. She smiled. Violet showed Dominic the photo, watching his entire face soften. "She's perfect." His voice held wonder. Like her mother. Like her aunt. Mirabel had divorced Adrian. Easy to do when your husband was serving 15 years for racketeering and attempted murder. She'd moved to a small coastal town under a new identity, living quietly with her daughter and slowly rebuilding herself. She and Violet talked almost daily, a friendship forged in crisis and strengthened by genuine affection. "We should visit next month," Violet suggested. "I miss her." "Done." Dominic turned her in his arms, his expression growing serious. "Speaking of family, there's something I want to ask you." Violet's heart rate kicked up. "Okay." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "I know it's only been 6 months," Dominic said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. "I know we met in the most insane circumstances, and we've spent half that time dealing with federal investigations and dismantling criminal organizations. I know conventional wisdom says we should wait longer, be more certain, follow some timeline that makes sense to normal people." He opened the box, revealing a ring, elegant, understated, a single diamond that caught the light like a promise. "But Violet, I've never been conventional, and you've never been ordinary. From the moment you accidentally sent me that photo," his smile was tender, "you've been turning my world upside down in the best possible way. You saw past the reputation to the man underneath. You risked everything to save me when you had every reason to run. You shot a man for me." Violet laughed through sudden tears. "That's your romantic selling point. I committed assault with a deadly weapon. You committed to us when it was dangerous and impossible." His free hand cupped her cheek. "You chose me when I was at my lowest. You believed I could be better, and then you helped me become it. Violet Keller, you are the bravest, most brilliant, most extraordinary woman I've ever known. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth the faith you had in me." He dropped to one knee, and Violet's vision blurred completely. "Will you marry me?" She should make him wait. Should be practical, reasonable, remember that 6 months was objectively too soon. But Violet had learned that life was too short for should. That love didn't follow timelines. That sometimes the most insane decisions were the rightest ones. "Yes." The word came out choked with emotion. "Yes, absolutely yes." Dominic stood, sliding the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled slightly, then kissed her with a tenderness that made her soul ache. This was nothing like their first desperate kiss on the plane, or the passionate reunion after the MCC assault. This was a promise, a beginning, a forever sealed with the taste of happy tears and hope. When they finally broke apart, both grinning like fools, Violet admired the ring on her finger. "It's beautiful. When did you?" 3 months ago. I've been carrying it around, waiting for the perfect moment." He laughed. "Turns out there's no perfect moment. Just the right person and the courage to ask." Violet's phone exploded with texts, Riley, who must have somehow already found out, sending a string of excited emojis and demands for details. Christine, saying she'd known this was coming and already had wedding magazines. Even Thomas, with a simple, "Congratulations. Boss made the right choice. We should celebrate," Dominic said, already pulling out his phone. "Dinner at that place you love, champagne, the works." "Or," Violet countered, wrapping her arms around his neck, "we could go home, order takeout, and spend the evening on our couch planning our completely legitimate, wonderfully boring future together." His eyes softened. "That sounds perfect." And it was. 1 year later, Violet Costigan, still getting used to the new last name, stood in the gallery where this had all begun. Not Adrian's gallery in Chicago, but a new space in New York that Mirabel had opened with Dominic's investment and Violet's business planning. The opening night was packed with art lovers, society people, and a few reformed criminals who'd successfully transitioned to legitimate business. Thomas was there with his wife, looking uncomfortable in a suit. Riley tended bar, winking at Violet every time she passed. Christine sat in the corner, chatting animatedly with Dr. Chen about experimental treatments and miracle recoveries. And Dominic stood beside her, his hand resting protectively on her very pregnant belly. "She's kicking again," Violet said, guiding his hand to the right spot. His face lit up with wonder, the same expression he got every time their daughter made her presence known. Strong, like her mother. Stubborn, like her father. "God help us," he laughed. Mirabel approached, Elena toddling beside her, the 1-year-old's dress covered in what looked like frosting from the dessert table. "Your daughter found the cake," Mirabel said apologetically. "Our daughter found the cake," Violet corrected, scooping up Elena and kissing her sticky cheek. They'd officially adopted Mirabel's daughter 6 months ago, wanting Elena to have the family stability she deserved. And clearly she has excellent taste. Dominic took Elena from Violet, the big dangerous former Mafia boss completely undone by a toddler's giggle. "What am I going to do with 2 daughters? I'll never survive." "You'll be wrapped around both their fingers," Violet predicted. "Just like you're wrapped around mine." His kiss was soft, sweet, chaste enough for public but promising enough for later. Completely and happily. Agent Dawson approached, off-duty and surprisingly friendly now that their professional relationship had evolved into something like mutual respect. "Beautiful gallery," she said to Mirabel. "And congratulations on the baby," she added to Violet. "When are you due?" 6 weeks. We're terrified and thrilled in equal measure. You'll be amazing parents. You've already proven you can handle anything." Dawson's smile was genuine. "By the way, Adrian Sokolov's appeal was denied yesterday. He'll serve his full sentence, possibly longer with new evidence that surfaced about other operations." Violet felt Dominic's hand tighten on her shoulder. That chapter of their lives was truly closed, Adrian imprisoned, the Bratva scattered, Jake, Yakov, serving time in a different facility for espionage and fraud. Everything that had started with an accidentally sent photo had led to this. A life beyond anything Violet had imagined possible. "Thank you," Dominic said to Dawson. "For the update, and for everything. The second chance." "Don't waste it," Dawson replied, but her tone was warm. She left to examine a painting, leaving them in their small family bubble. Riley appeared with champagne, sparkling cider for Violet, and raised her glass. A toast. To Violet, who accidentally sent a sexy photo to the Mafia boss and somehow turned it into a love story for the ages. To Dominic, who saw the extraordinary woman she was before she saw it herself. And to all of us, who get to witness their happily ever after. "Here, here," Christine called from across the room. Glasses clinked. Elena shrieked with joy. Mirabel laughed, and Violet felt the baby kick again, as if celebrating too. Dominic pulled her close, carefully, mindful of her belly, and pressed his lips to her ear. "I love you, Violet Costigan. Thank you for that accidental photo. Thank you for being brave enough to save me. Thank you for this life." Violet turned in his arms, meeting his eyes, those smoke and fire eyes that had terrified her once and now felt like home. "I love you too. And Dominic." She smiled, thinking of the terrified woman who'd sat on her couch 6 months ago, staring at a delivered message and panicking. I'd send that photo 1,000 times if it meant finding you. His laugh was pure joy. Best mistake either of us ever made. Outside the gallery, the city lights glittered with possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, a baby to prepare for, a business to grow, a life to build one legitimate, wonderful day at a time. But tonight, surrounded by family forged through fire and love that had survived impossible odds, Violet knew one truth with absolute certainty. Sometimes the wrong message sent to the wrong person at the wrong time turns out to be exactly, perfectly right. And sometimes, the most extraordinary love stories start with the most ordinary mistakes. We have come to the end of the story. Thank you for watching to the end. Share with me in the comments how you feel about the story. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And also hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our heartwarming stories like this.